This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community, episode 113. I'm Dylan Rhee.
And I'm Harold Rhee.
Today's guests are the amazing Jimmy and Rose Hunter.
I do remember the first time I saw Tulsa in the bottom of the enclosure. I mean, my heart was just broken, but I wouldn't touch her. I was like, oh, I'm not touching that. 6 months later, she completely changed everything about my thoughts on reptiles.
Nancy will be back next episode. She went on a 6-mile dog walk today, so she's a little sore. Rose and Jimmy Hunter are the incredible people behind House of Ig. They currently live with 11 rescued iguanas with names like Sonia, Abe, Tweety, Stevie, Sassy, and my favorite, Hellboy. If you have any friends who are reptile lovers, you're definitely not going to want to miss this episode. Rose and Jimmy provide lots of information, a lot of links and resources. You can find those show notes filled with lots of iguana photos at thisispawprint.com/113. That's the number 113.
We are talking about iguanas. We have a couple different varieties, but House of Ig is actually just House of Iguana.
How many iguanas, or as you call them, kids, how many kids do you guys have?
For the iguana type of kid, we have 11 right now. We do house a few other animals as well, but we do have 11 iguanas.
All right. 11 iguanas. You probably started out with one. So how'd you get to one? And then from one, how'd you get to 11?
I'll let Jimmy tell that story with the one.
So whenever I was moving from Oklahoma to Chicago, we went down there in November to bring my stuff up here. And a relative of mine had an iguana in an aquarium that for some reason wasn't eating very much. So they didn't know whether or not it was sick or just wasn't eating. So being uneducated, they just thought it was the animal being the animal. Well, Rose being an animal lover that she is, she just saw it in distress and basically like, we need to take it to the vet and get it looked at. So in doing that, we called around to a few locations and either they were too busy or they didn't take, iguanas. So we just found the closest one possible from us, put the iguana in a box and just took it there. You had it looked at or put down because it looked pretty bad. So we walked into the vet. We're like, we're here to have this iguana looked at. And they're like, what? But yeah, we know it's really sick. We need to have it looked at or have it put down. So we handed over the iguana. They took it back, and we were expecting it to be put down because it looked pretty bad. Well, come to find out, it had a big abscess in the roof of its mouth from getting a piece of the substrate, which was cedar chips, lodged in its mouth, and it caused a big sore, which was an abscess. So it couldn't eat anything. So by it not really eating, got lethargic, couldn't do anything. So the vet actually lanced it, pushed all the gook out of it, and told us to feed it baby food and keep it at 85 degrees. And we're like, what? Really? We weren't expecting to actually take an iguana back home with us. We were thinking it was going to be put down. So we're like, oh, okay, thank you. Here we are in November, heading to Chicago with an iguana on her dash of her car for 10-hour trip heading back home. And that was our first rescue.
How big was the iguana at the time?
When we got Tulsa, she was right at probably about 2.5, 3 feet, because she was in a very small enclosure and she wasn't really fed properly. But before she passed, she's probably right at about 4 feet, nose to tail. She was an awesome iguana. I mean, we hand fed her for a good 6 to 8 months, and then she got a little bit better, stronger. She started nibbling a little bit more. But after about basically a year of care, she bounced back pretty good. And I mean, she never really once whipped at us, tried to bite us, showed any kind of defense that most iguanas would have towards humans. So it kind of opened our eyes up to a reptile being a pet, because Rose had never liked anything, scaly whatsoever. And here she was basically bonding and falling in love with this iguana. And it was just, amazing to have that kind of an animal have that much of an emotional attached to you and you to it.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how much I did bond with her. I do remember the first time I saw Tulsa in the bottom of the enclosure. I mean, my heart was just broken, but I wouldn't touch her. I was like, oh, I'm not touching that. Someone put it in a box and someone pick it up. And, not 6 months later, I was hugging her and trying to get her to eat and coaxing her. And, she was just a very good girl. She completely changed everything about my thoughts on reptiles.
How long ago did Tulsa pass away?
2008.
Tulsa passed away in 2008, so she's been gone for about 9 years. It'll be August 5th. It'll be 9 years. You know, it was kind of funny because when she passed away, we had her put down because her internal organs, from all of the growth spurt she had and all the good food she had, her body actually couldn't accept it, and all of her internal organs hardened. You know, when we put her down, I was like, okay, I'm done. I can't get another one. I mean, I was just completely crushed. And of course, Jimmy knows me very well. He did not take the enclosure down because he built a custom enclosure for her. And we did, the vet who helped us at that point, they had, ironically enough, a flyer up in their waiting room, you know, a lady asking for help. Someone please take this iguana off of her hands. And it was a young female iguana, 1 year old. So, of course, I remembered that. It was etched in my memory from Tulsa. So, of course, we went to take a look at her. She was just a town over in South Elgin, Illinois. Not even a month later, we went and picked up Jade, and we still have Jade today.
What's the life expectancy of your average iguana?
Average iguana in captivity can probably live into their 20s, but with husbandry nowadays, you know, you're happy if you get them to 20. The oldest known iguana living right now is actually overseas and 30 years old.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
A green. Yeah, for a green iguana.
Because, like, the rocks can live, like, around 80.
Could you maybe explain the different types of iguanas?
Well, and I will tell you, I'm not an expert by far. We know green iguanas very well, and we also have a rock iguana. There are Mexican spiny-tailed iguanas. There are Fiji iguanas. There are really several different species that are out there, which, you know, I won't speak to them because I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as I would like to be. 10 of our iguanas are green iguanas, and the other type that we have is a rock iguana.
So your green iguanas, I mean, what makes them special to you?
I think that they're just, especially for this area, they're very unique. And I think it's just how my transformation of how they changed my mind. I would love to bring that to others. You know, I mean, I never had a bad experience with them, but it's the unknowing. You know, I never really was near an iguana. I was never near a snake. I was never near any type of reptile, but we were never really introduced to them as younger children either. So I think that that's, to me, what makes them unique, at least for me here, is that they're not typical and they're really just amazing animals.
It's more like, you know, everybody has a dog and a cat, basically, as a pet growing up, and not really venturing out because of the unknown of an iguana and or another reptile. And an iguana, I mean, has the same lifespan, basically, as a smaller dog, you know, 15 to 18, 20 years. So a child can grow up with an iguana and have almost the exact same experiences and memories with an iguana as a dog or a cat. They're unique in themselves, but because of the lack of knowledge that people have of them, there's that, you know, that fear, oh, it's an iguana, they eat meat and that kind of thing. Well, iguanas don't eat meat, so they're not that terrifying. They're strict vegetarians. So it's a unique pet in itself, but yet they have, we relate emotions to their behaviors. So they cuddle, they do some kisses, you know, they bond very well with their humans, you could say. So it's just different to have an iguana on your shoulder walking around than it is walking a dog on a leash.
We're talking to Rose and Jimmy Hunter of the House of Ig. Well, with that said, what are some of the basics when it comes to iguana care?
So I say the biggest basics that people have to have down for husbandry is their lighting, their food, and their environment. So they have to have space. They have to have humidity. And again, this is for, and when we talk, I just want to be clear, this is really just mainly for the green iguanas. There are some subtle differences for other types of iguanas. So I don't want to confuse folks when we're speaking. I'm going to generalize about green iguanas only today. Green iguanas can grow quite large. They'll keep growing regardless what size enclosure you have them in. So if you're planning on having an iguana, you need to have some space. You need to know what they eat. They are vegetarian, but they have a wide variety of things that they can eat. You know, one of the people that we talk to often, you know, he gives his green iguanas, I think, over 100 varieties of greens a year. Same thing with vegetables. They have a very wide variety. Some are occasional, some are staple, but a varied diet is very important for them. Humidity is also extremely important for them. It helps them to shed. It helps them to keep, their moisture up in their body. They're not great drinkers. They have to have basically what they're used to in their native land, South America. It's very hot. It's very humid. Those are the biggest basic things I would say.
Yeah. Well, living out in Illinois, as you said, I mean, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, so I definitely know in the winters, right? I mean, it gets dry. Your skin starts to crack and all that. Well, what are the challenges of trying to keep a humid environment during the wintertime?
Well, we actually have humidifiers all over inside their enclosure. So thankfully, our home has April air, so it helps us, for the human side, take care of our skin. But Jimmy is a great mechanic, if you will. So we'll buy humidifiers and we'll hook them up with rigid hose and PVC pipe. And we will, having a humidifier inside of their enclosure to help keep that humidity up.
We also have thermostat, you could say, that rates the humidity percentage in the enclosure. So, I mean, the one iguana room, as we call it, it has 3 humidifiers in it right now, just to maintain the humidity that they need. That's in a 11 by 13 room.
Wow. Your house must look like the coolest science experiment ever.
It really does. It is not at all the typical home that you would normally walk into. I mean, when you walk into our home, there's basically iguanas everywhere. We have some that cohab. They live together. Most of them have their own spaces. They're each very unique. So, clearly the male iguanas are territorial. They need their space. They can get very aggressive during breeding season. Some of our larger females, they've lived together for a number of years, and thankfully, they all get along very well. During breeding season, we do keep an eye out for them as well. They can be very, as Jimmy likes to call, fussy. So if they start to get fussy with one another, we can easily separate. But again, thankfully, they get along very well. And our house is definitely not normal by far.
Okay. How is socialization around humans? I mean, does it often take a while, or is it pretty immediate?
Each iguana, I'm going to say, is different on their own. You can do the handling daily with some of them, and they'll still be totally scared of your hand, you in general, your clothing can spook them. And then there are some that just take to it very quickly. It's patience and knowing the animal's body language and attitudes from the start, basically, if you can.
And them trusting that you will not put them in a situation that would harm them.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, we have a female Sonia. Only until she got as big as she is now, which has taken her 6 years, has she really started to take to us finally. I mean, at first she was terrified. She would run, she'd cower, she'll just try to hide herself from us. And it took 6 years to where now we can go up to her, love on her. She's still kind of, a little timid, but nothing near like she was. And then we have Abe. We got him at 2 years old, and at 2 years old, he was, a terror when we first got him. But a month later, he was like our biggest kid. He was like, my baby, you could say, because he would love on my neck, because I'm warm-blooded, so it liked the body heat, so he would cuddle on my neck with his face and neck itself, and just kind of go to sleep. And I mean, we've been best buddies ever since. So it's just time and patience.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Awesome stuff. How often do they sleep? I mean, like what's their activity level usually?
So I'll say in the wintertime, it's far less. It is Chicago. They don't move around a ton. When it does warm up, I think that they, their internal body clocks kind of know that, the seasons are coming. And so Abe is getting a lot more active now. Abe actually lives in, I want to say, the same part of the house that we do. So his enclosure is actually right behind our couch, and we'll leave his door open. And he comes out much more often now. Like, he'll just come out, wander around, and sit with us on the couch. Whereas from, I want to say, October through January, February-ish, he really just wants to sit in his enclosure under his heat lamp and chill out. not too much activity, but everyone is ramping up. It's going to be a busy year for us this year because the kids are growing and, we've got to get them all out for some sunlight in the summertime. So we're ramping up here.
Okay.
We try to put every enclosure we can next to a window to give the animals some kind of outside stimulus when we're not around, to give them some attention. So they're not way too bored, you could say.
Are iguanas known as escape artists? Like, will they actually try to get outside the house and start running out?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We had an incident with Abe that somehow got out of his enclosure, and when he did, he injured his face. And we still, to this day, have no idea how he got out of his enclosure because there was no hole that he got out of.
Yeah, we have some pretty good safeguards on many of their enclosures. No one's really near a front door where they could scurry out. No windows are kept open, even in the summertime. If we take them outside, it is completely 100% supervised. We don't, throw them out in their enclosure and then walk away. If they want to get out, they'll try to find a way to get out, even if it's hurting themselves, as Jimmy said with Abe. And we have one young blue iguana. His name is Tweety. And the people that we got Tweety from actually named him Tweety because of Tweety Bird. He would always escape from his cage. So, they're good escape artists.
They have all day to look in an enclosure for a way out. So they're constantly doing that. So from experiences of our previous enclosures that I've built that weren't escape proof, as you could say, I've kind of learned to kind of cover my bases with all the small holes, the different kind of screen or plexi to use and that kind of thing to where they can't get out of now.
Thanks for sharing that. How about stuff like potty training? Is that something that you can actually do with iguanas, or do you just have to kind of get used to their habits and when they go?
It's all about the individual iguana. Some of our iguanas, we were easily able to potty train them to water, and some iguanas, it just doesn't matter. They're just going to go where they're going to go.
And that is true too. On you or in the car or on your couch, it doesn't matter. When they want to go,
it's happening.
It's happening. Although, if you do know your iguana very well, there's some movements prior to that happening, and you can kind of do a quick dash real quick.
Yes.
Yeah, they're giving you a signal, right?
Yes.
Well, they kind of shake their butt a little bit and stand up a little bit.
I love that. Okay, great. Like dogs and cats, any need to get them spayed, neutered? Is that even a possibility?
It actually is. For the males, they don't really neuter them. If anything does happen, it does typically look at the female. It helps with egg binding so that doesn't happen. And really, that's why we had Sonia spayed. One of our iguanas, we actually have done that. And the interesting thing about Sonia is she was such a sweet, demure little iguana, and now she actually looks big and tough like one of our male iguanas. Her hormones have changed, and she's taking on many more male traits than we would have ever anticipated.
Yeah, it's kind of scary now.
Gotcha.
The potty training part of it, though, too, there's also a bioactive substrate that you can do in an enclosure also, which is basically like taking your outside dirt with all the little micro critters in it, and put that down in the bottom of the enclosure. And then as the reptiles go potty, the bugs will clean it up after themselves. So it's kind of like the natural outdoors. You can do that as an option also.
Wow.
And then you just change the dirt out like every 6 or 8 months whenever, it kind of gets kind of full of stuff or the bugs die out. But yeah, that's one thing we're starting to look at more often because a lot of our iguanas are trained to the water, but it's a time-consuming process each day, you could say, to go in, clean the waters out, refill it again. So when you go to the bioactive, it's just like normal outside. The cleanup bugs are inside there. They eat the poop. They eat down the fallen food on the ground, and so there's no kind of real waste in the enclosures anymore.
All right.
It's like natural outdoors.
Just like you said, every iguana is going to be a little different. Maybe some of them, that biosubstrate really does the trick, and maybe for others it doesn't really help that much, I would imagine.
Like, we've moved Abe to bioactive, and it's really helped us a lot with him because he's a 14-pound iguana. And I will say he
craps like a small dog.
Yes, he poops like a small dog. So it's not like we can take him out and walk him. So the bioactive really helps keep him clean and, within a day, not even, his dirt is clean again. And we've actually had some success at growing some food down in the bottom for him as well. So he can go down and nibble on, fresh greens that are growing right in the bottom of his enclosure. So.
Holy cow. You guys really are, I would imagine if you're an iguana, you want to hang out with Rose and Jimmy. I would have to say what you guys do as far as these custom made enclosures and all that sounds amazing.
Well, as we learn stuff throughout, our trials of doing things, we try to, what am I looking for here? Incorporate all that we learn into the enclosures to make it a more pleasant and more realistic environment for them.
Okay. I would imagine you've also learned a little bit about tropical plants too, right?
Yeah, we have. And I think one of the things that we really try to mimic are the foods that are really good for them that we can grow here. So we've learned trial and error with some of these too. The kids really love hibiscus trees, although we know we can't put that in their enclosure because it will be stripped within a matter of hours.
Oh.
So
they've killed several trees so far.
Yes. So, we've learned what we can and what we can't put in there. Brussels sprouts grow really good in there. Collard greens, mustard greens grow really good. Squash sprouts grow really well in their enclosures, and it's great for them to eat. Romaine.
Bok choy.
So a lot of things really work in growing in their enclosures that are good for them to eat. As for tropical plants, we don't put a lot of those in there because some of the tropical plants are quite expensive, and they would probably last a matter of maybe a day or two.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. I'm glad I asked though, because I would imagine some folks maybe want to get too realistic, right?
They could do that. They just need a lot of money.
Right. Okay. Well, switching gears a little bit, tell us a little bit about the community. It's like, obviously, you're not just in a bubble. Maybe first starting out with Tulsa, you were kind of on your own, but over time with social media, tell us a little bit about what are your favorite resources and your favorite communities that you belong to?
So really, we did do this, I do want to say, in our own bubble for quite a while. We didn't want to really publicize too much. We were a little bit worried about, people kind of targeting our house, and because these guys can be vanity pets for some. But now that we broke out of the bubble, there's some Facebook communities that we belong to that really give us a lot of good information. There's so many knowledgeable people out there. There are some that are not so knowledgeable, but there are some that just have an incredible amount of knowledge that they freely share. So, one of the communities out on Facebook is Iguanas of the World. And there are members from literally around the world sharing, stories and experiences about their iguanas. And it's just absolutely incredible at the knowledge that some of these guys have.
So Facebook's helped out. How about finding a local veterinarian?
Actually, I want to tell you, we struck gold right away. When we first had Tulsa, we went to a local veterinarian right here in our town. And I will tell you, wasn't really pleased with him, but that led us to our current vet, Dr. Eileen O'Brien at Dundee Animal Hospital. We learned some hard lessons with Tulsa, but in moving to Dr. O'Brien, she is just an amazing vet. She's got great knowledge. She does tons of research. She keeps up her education, and we brought her some challenging things. So I will say that right off the bat, we were extremely lucky, and we've stayed with her, the 11 years now that we've been doing this.
Right.
And that would be key too, is to find a good vet that you can trust and will work with you with stuff.
Okay. All right.
A vet's not easy to find.
What do you tend to do as far as like regular schedules for medical exams? I mean, how often do you need to do it? What are some of the things that you need to keep an eye on to make sure that you maintain a healthy iguana?
So really, I will say that one of the key things is know your animal. Pay attention to them, look at them every day. Get to know their mannerisms, get to know the things that they do and don't do. Again, everyone is individual and unique. That's one of the things that Jimmy and I do every day is we, look at each one. We'll spend, some time with them, just making sure we look at their body. But from an overall perspective, knowing that your husbandry is good, we literally take them to the vet once a year, and clearly more often as needed. We do get blood tests drawn on them so that we have an idea of what's going on. If you know your animal and you pay attention, you will see signs right away if something is off. We've noticed with our rock iguana, Stevie. We got her last May. And, as we've gotten to know her, we know her mannerisms. And this past December, we noticed that she was exhibiting some very odd behavior. So, we literally took her to the vet the next day because it was a Sunday when we noticed the behavior. So Dr. O'Brien wasn't in. And, we've been treating her ever since. We go every 2 to 3 weeks with her to get her checked, making sure that she's headed in the right direction. And again, you just have to pay attention. And I would say every 6 months to a year, if you're newer at this, and get your comfort level with your animal.
And I would say also through one of our experiences, please take your animal to the vet at least once to get a good baseline on whether or not it's a healthy animal or not, no matter what age it really is. Because when we rescued one of our males, Pumpkin, which is now gone, he looked awesome on the outside. No injuries, no signs of, any kind of distress. All the toes were there. All the nails were there. Didn't lose his tail. He had a few, stuck shed locations, but when he got blood work done, he was near death. He had, liver failure, kidney failure. His white blood cell counts were high. And you can't tell that by looking on the outside of the iguana. Take it to the vet. It may be a few $100 initially, but if it's healthy, even when it's a baby, go to get an overall health look. You may not be able to draw blood right then because it's so small, but take it back when you can get blood drawn, because you don't know internal issues until you know internal issues. And from there, you'll have a good baseline of care going forward. Hey, if I do the proper stuff, I should have a healthy, animal. If I, slack here and there in food and stuff, maybe whatever reason I go get it checked out and something's wrong, I'll know right away instead of waiting until it's unrepairable. Because these guys don't show signs at all, really, unless you know your animal's habits, its mannerisms, all that kind of stuff.
They are masters at hiding illness. So, you may think everything's great. And again, Pumpkin was a great example that, he looked great. He was a big male. He had the weight. Come to find out the next day, she even told me, Rose, you need to sit down. And she went over his litany of different issues that he had with 3 different kinds of worms and the livers and the kidney and all the different issues. Literally, I was crushed. We did end up having him for another number of years until those issues finally ended up catching up with him. But I will say, out of all the iguanas that we've taken in, we've only lost 2 over the years that we've been doing this. So my track record isn't 100%, but our track record also isn't terrible. So
I think it's actually pretty good. I don't have a lot of experience with iguanas, but I definitely know that you can lose iguanas pretty fast if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Well, maybe Rose, let's start with you. If you could choose, other than Tulsa, if you could choose an iguana, which would you say is an iguana that really inspires you or is really special to you?
I want to say, out of all the iguanas that we've had, I think Pumpkin, if I could choose a favorite out of my children, which I really shouldn't, but everyone who we've had, Pumpkin was probably the biggest impact. I never really wanted a male iguana because they just get big and gnarly and they're territorial and they're aggressive and they're kind of dirty, and it's kind of like a little boy wrapped up into, a smaller package, if you will, until they grow out of it. But he was just such a kind, gentle old man, if you will. When we got him, he was about 9 years old, and he was just such a great iguana. He had the best temperament. He was just so sweet, and he had the just the sweetest face. He really just changed my mind even further about iguanas and male iguanas specifically. So, he probably had the biggest impact on me.
And how about you, Jimmy? Any particular iguana who's really inspired you?
I really can't say I have a favorite, but I am leaning towards Abe. Abe reminds me of a younger Pumpkin. He really does. He has Pumpkin's attitude at 5 years old now. He's pretty chill. He's laid back. he's great with the kids. He's great with humans in general. He doesn't have any, I don't want to say bad bones in him, but he has his moments whenever he's out in summertime in his own personal enclosure. He'll get territorial and get, moody and stuff, but I'm bigger than he is, so he has to listen. But yeah, I would say Abe. I mean, not because he's the biggest of all that we have, but because his demeanor is just so much more like mine. I'm a pretty laid back kind of guy, and he's kind of turning into that also.
All right. Well, we're talking to Rose and Jimmy Hunter of House of Ig. If you guys had a magic wand and could do something to change the state of animal rescue, maybe reptile rescue in particular, what do you think you guys would do?
I know the first thing I would do immediately. I would stop allowing any carnival or any kind of organization to give away these animals as prizes. That would be my number one. My second thing would be to introduce these animals to children much, much sooner than they probably have the opportunity to meet them now. I think that's something I touched on earlier, at least from my own personal experience, is that, it just wasn't something that we were ever really introduced to. And it was, so exotic and new that I think it was kind of scary. And even still to this point, I think that stigma is still out there. And I think they're incredible animals as long as you, again, just like getting a dog, you have to know the type of breed that you're going to get to know that what the requirements are for that breed. If you're getting a St. Bernard, clearly, you're going to be getting a large dog and you need to plan for that. If you're going down to a teacup Chihuahua, it's the same thing. What are the different needs that those animals require? So I think that would be, if I had a magic wand, that would be my next thing, is to, really provide good information from knowledgeable people. Because there's a lot of, to be blunt, crap information out there that some people, if they don't know, they'll eat it up and then, they end up unfortunately hurting their animal. But those would be my two biggest things are no more prizes and some really good educational information that is spot on.
All right. And Jimmy, would you like to add to anything that Rose just mentioned?
I'm more of the harsher side of it. I would probably do it to where they couldn't really be pets, to where they wouldn't need rescuing. Just in the sense that because they are such beautiful animals and they are very timid with, needing the proper care, that they die a horrible death if you don't know about it. And it's just heartbreaking to see it happen. So, I mean, like any animal, if you don't take care of it properly, it's going to, have a bad experience. But these guys here, by them being so unique, people, can get them as a prize at a carnival or $15, $20 at a swap meet, which again is not very much money, but they require a lot of care and a lot of knowledge. And I mean, if there is a way to help the species more, to me, it would be not to allow them to really be pets at all, or their arrest wouldn't be needed for them.
You two really are animal rescue heroes. Why do you think you do what you do?
From a young age, I've always just adored any kind of an animal. I may not personally want to be around it, but if it was in distress, I wanted to help it. So I think it's just, in general, I like helping. Animals don't really necessarily have a voice. So if I can be that voice, and sometimes with me, I'm a quite loud voice, I want to be there for them and do that. We help many animals, but iguanas are really our focus. I think I just do it out of the love of the animal. Just want to bring some happiness to an otherwise bad situation and make sure that they know love and happiness.
I think for me, it's more of the sense that because I can, I'm going to. It's surprising how many reptiles actually need a home that someone had once had and they've outgrown care or realized, oh, hey, I really can't sustain them anymore. And, then what? Usually they let them go into the wild, and where we're at in the States, they freeze this here. They'll die in the wintertime. So people will release them in summertime, and 6 months later they're dead because they froze to death outside. I mean, that's not cool. It really isn't. So I mean, because these are our kids, you could say. It's great to be able to take them in and give them a new life to live, kind of like a forever home, you could say, and just to be able to do that for the animal itself.
All right. I know it was many, many years ago. If you could ever talk to Tulsa again, what do you think she'd say to you two?
I would hope that she would say thank you. And I think that she would. I mean, she was so far gone when we got her. You know, I don't even think she was really aware of anything that was happening to her with the first, I don't know, maybe month.
Yeah.
I mean, she barely opened her eyes. She barely did anything. So I think that she would say thanks for giving her a good life and feeding her good food and taking her outside and letting her get in the grass.
Anything else that we should know about when it comes to the wonderful world of reptiles?
Education,
and there are a ton of resources out there for anyone who's out there having questions or issues and needing help. You know, search locally. There are tons and tons of really awesome rescues out there that can help you answer questions, help educate you, help, keep your animal. If you really love your animal and you want to and you just don't know what to do some research, get to know your animal and what you have and the amazing creature that you have in your home, whether it's an iguana, whether it's a bearded dragon, whether it's a snake. Do your research. And if you're in trouble, reach out for help. There is no shame in asking for help if you don't know what to do. Had we not done that, we would have never, ever learned, a tenth of what we know now. And we still know so little. So reach out, get some help. Don't be afraid to ask those questions because knowledge is key. And there, as the old saying goes from everything, there is not a stupid question. If anyone ever needs to find us, we're out on Facebook. Just go and look for House of Ig. You can message me. Our phone number is also out on our website at houseofig.com. We're always available to help.
What's the best way to find you through social media?
We have a Twitter account. It's at House of Ig. Facebook. You can search for at House of Ig. Those are probably my two main outlets that I monitor and watch out for. Call me, message me any way you can get to me. And again, we'll answer anything that we can help with.
We want to say thank you to Rose and Jimmy Hunter of the House of Ig for sharing their stories. We also want to give a special thanks to Mike Danahey. He was the reporter in the Chicago area who wrote a wonderful article on Jimmy and Rose. So thank you, Mike. And we also want to thank Instagram friend Dragon Ranch Jen for encouraging us to highlight reptile rescue. So thank you, Jen. If you want to find our show notes with plenty of links and photos, go to thisispawprint.com/113. If you'd like to meet me or Nancy on social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. If you'd like to find more episodes of Paw Print, you can find us on your favorite podcast app like iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube. Search for Paw Print Animal Rescue and hit subscribe to get the latest episodes immediately. Stay tuned next week when we interview Jessie Frieden, photographer and author of a new book, Finding Shelter. Wonderful photos of shelter animals as well as shelter workers across the United States. So join us next time for Jessie Frieden. We just want to say thank you for listening and for sharing Paw Print with your friends and family. We've already been listened to in over 120 countries. So thanks for spreading the word. And remember, you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone. And see you next time on Paw Print.
Is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.